What's up, everybody? Matt Kajeski here, back again with the Stokastic channel. And today I am talking college football DFS ahead of week 2, the main slate. We are going to get into everything you need to know for this 14-game slate. Before we get started, make sure to hit that thumbs up button, subscribe to the channel, and hit the notification bell so you know when this and all other content goes live. We're also brought to you today by Prize Picks. And if you've never heard of Prize Picks, fantastic offer for you guys. They are a prop-based daily contest site where you can make lineups of player props up to 5 players. And better yet, there's no sharks, no mass entries, no optimizers, and they have a $100 first match deposit when you click the link below. So make sure to check out Prize Picks. You can also do cross entries by sport. You could mix college football with NFL, with MLB baseball, whatever it is you prefer. Prize Picks has it. So make sure to take advantage of that first match deposit bonus by clicking the link in the description. All right, so we are doing DFS breakdowns. We started these yesterday with the data sheet. It is back available on Stokastic, and we're going to continue to do so today. It's a massive 14-game slate, so we'll try to keep things concise, but get through everything you need to know for these games. And we'll bring you behind the glass right now. This is everything you need to know for the main slate. Up at the top, you're going to see team-by-team matchup stuff. There is the pass rate and the plays per game. These are still last year's numbers, but everything else is pertinent to this year. O-line, D-line, that's how many sacks an offensive line allowed versus how many sacks a defensive line generated. Vegas odds, so the implied team total, spread, overall total, and then both pass yards allowed and rush yards allowed on defense, and then how that shakes up when you break it down on a per attempt basis. So diving into this, we'll start with South Carolina taking on Arkansas. 8-point spread in favor of the Razorbacks, 53-point total. That gives South Carolina just a 22.5 total. Not great here, but we have Spencer Rattler under center. He performed reasonably well in week 1. Not great considering they faced Georgia State. 236 yards for Rattler. He was negative in the rushing yard category. We know this is going to be an up-tempo, pass-heavy scheme, so Rattler does have some appeal here. Arkansas lost Jalen Catalon and Slusher in their secondary, and that's kind of when the floodgates open for them against Cincinnati. So at 5,900, he's not a phenomenal play, but I think there's some outside consideration in GPPs just based on the offense he runs. In the receiving game, you're still dealing with an injury to Corey Rucker. Antwain Wells was the number 1 in this game, 8 targets for him. There's a pretty solid number for Antwain Wells. He's the transfer who came over from James Madison. But then you had a slew of players with 4 targets. Josh Vann, you have Jalen Brooks. Jaheim Bell is a player I think that is a particularly solid option when you look at him price adjusted. He's a hyper athletic tight end prospect, and he was so involved that they actually decided to give him 7 carries in the run game. He's big. Think of him kind of like a souped up Deebo Samuel type player overall. So Jaheim Bell really stands out as a player who could be seeing a lot of opportunity, not just in the pass game, but in the run game as well, coming at a really cheap price. I think he makes some sense. And then even down the list, they're going to rotate a lot of receivers, see some potential really cheap options like Amarian Brown played a pretty decent amount for this team in week 1. Only 3 targets, didn't really produce in the final box score, but he's on the field. So if you're looking for just min price guys, I'm probably just going to go a little bit above that and play Jaheim Bell, but Amarian Brown, he could make some sense too as a guy that's on the field a decent amount for this team. In the run game, the only thing that might hurt Jaheim Bell and his potential to be a pseudo Deebo Samuel type player is the return of Christian Beal-Smith, who is expected to be back in this game. That kind of renders this backfield a nasty timeshare, and I'm not sure we want to get to any of these guys. You already had Marshawn Lloyd sharing with Juju McDowell. That's going to be an issue. I do think that Juju McDowell is going to be the backup, but if this is any sort of timeshare with a 22 implied team total, I don't think this is solid. Again, Christian Beal-Smith, he's probable for this game. He's like a big bowling ball. That's going to hurt McDowell and Lloyd overall. If playing just one, it would be Lloyd, but tough to get to this team in the running game outside of whatever Jaheim Bell offers. For Arkansas, high implied team total here. KJ Jefferson, solid mobility, good passer, efficient passer, we should say. This is going to be a run-heavy team. They don't play with incredible pace, but they have a solid offensive line that returned 4 starters. So Jefferson being involved in that, certainly something we can look at 7,400. I think he's a solid price-adjusted play. He's a guy that averaged around 50 yards rushing per game last year. So this is a solid number to get with KJ Jefferson. Again, 62 yards last week against Cincinnati. And then in the run game, they actually gave Raheem Sanders a monstrous workload. 20 carries, 4 targets in the pass game. This is awesome opportunity for Raheem Sanders, and he did so against Cincinnati. That's a tough opponent overall. I think they're getting a much better matchup against South Carolina here. They should score some points. So Raheem Sanders, he stands out. The only question you have here is really what happens if they return Dominique Johnson. So he's a player that at an offseason injury, he should return to this contest. Thought he might return last week, but does he turn this into a timeshare, or do they give Raheem Sanders the full go here? I'm tentatively leaning towards Sanders getting that workload. And as a big favorite, he's a decent play. There are cheaper plays I like more, but he's still solid overall. Then in the pass game, Arkansas, they kind of consolidated their opportunity. You had really just 3 guys on the field at receiver. It was Warren Thompson, Jaden Hazelwood, and Matt Landers. And then at tight end, it was a lot of Trey Knox. So this is a spot where I think you have fairly condensed opportunity share between the top 4 receivers. Knox at 4,100, he used to be a receiver. He plays tight end now. 7 targets for him is pretty solid at 4,100. Outside of that, Jaden Hazelwood, 5 targets, 42 yards. I think Landers, the transfer, he comes in at 3,900 this week, 43 yards, 4 targets last week. He's a solid, cheaper play too. I like Knox and I like Landers as the cheaper options to stack with Jefferson here. Second game, we have Missouri taking on Kansas State. This is an 8-point spread as well in favor of Kansas State. The total of this game is 56.5, so a little bit higher, surprisingly. Missouri is going to play up-tempo. They were pass-heavy last year, 50% pass rate, but now they have a dual-threat signal caller. Brady Cook rushed for 61 yards in week 1. This is going to be a decent passing attack, too. They're going to throw the ball a fair amount, 27 attempts in week 1, but Louisiana Tech as the opponent didn't really put up much of a fight here. So Brady Cook at 5,800. The only issue here is that Kansas State depresses opposing play volume. They run this slow, run-heavy scheme, so Brady Cook doesn't project as an elite play, but he is playable. In the run game, you had a timeshare, and I'm not sure I want to mess with this. Cody Schrader, Nathaniel Pete, these guys were all involved. Schrader outtouched Pete 17-12, but I think this is probably a timeshare. At receiver, we did see Luther Burden heavily involved. 7 targets, and he actually had some carries as well. Some of these, where the variety where you're throwing the ball behind the line of scrimmage, so technically counts as a carry, but it was a pass. So it's not like he's lining up in the backfield a ton, but he's going to get the ball every which way for this team. So I think Luther Burden, first and foremost, he's their 5-star freshman. He should be the number 1 guy we're looking at. And then for all of the players they listed as co-starters last week, they let Towski Dove run around on 79% of dropbacks. He would be number 2, even though he saw 3 targets, and Dominic Lovett saw far more. When you look at Lovett's route rate, it was just 67%, so he's a little bit behind Towski Dove. I think Lovett's still fine, but a little bit expensive for a guy that's not on the field as a full-time player. Going to Kansas State, typically not a team we want to stack because they don't pass the ball very much, but Adrian Martinez comes in. He's been kind of the guy they want in this offense. They like mobile signal callers. Martinez offers that, 500 rushing yards in every season. Didn't need to use him last week, so we will see more than 16 attempts. We'll see ideally more than 39 rushing yards in a game with him when they're competitive. So Martinez, he's kind of sneaky here, but 6,700, you can find better price-adjusted plays. In the run game, Deuce Vaughn is affordable. They split him with DJ Giddens a little bit, but Deuce Vaughn we've seen handle monstrous workloads in the past. Rushed for 131 yards and 17 carries, saw 2 targets. He's one of the best target shares in college football when they're in competitive games, so no issues with Vaughn at this price. And then not really interested in the receivers. Malik Knowles is 5,600. I still view him as the number 1. And then behind him, well, I was pretty surprised to see the route rates for this team. We had the tight end, Sammy Wheeler, kind of down there, and I think this might just be a function of they were killing their opponent, but Malik Knowles and Phillip Brooks should still probably be the 1 and the 2 here. I wouldn't make too much of it. They're a little bit expensive either way. Brooks at 62, Malik Knowles at 56. Wake Forest taking on Vanderbilt. Wake taking a ton of money, 12-point spread, 65 total, giving Wake a monstrous team total, 38.5. That is because they are returning Sam Hartman. No sample size up here, but he's mobile. He averaged over 300 passing yards per game. Sam Hartman, completely fine. He just missed week 1 with an injury. If you want to stack Hartman, by all means. In the run game, they use a timeshare, so nothing to really see here outside of GPPs. They're also expensive. Don't like that. In the pass game, you have a lot of value. Donovan Green, A.T. Perry, these guys are extremely cheap, full-time players in the offense. I'm going to take stabs at both. Donovan Green's coming off a season-ending injury last year, but 8 targets last week. A.T. Perry, he was their leading receiver last year, 5 targets. Better days are ahead. You can also play Taylor Morin at 5.9K, full-time player in the offense. And then Blake Whiteheart, 2 targets, 3,600, played a lot of snaps, full-time tight end in the offense as well. I think Whiteheart is fully in play as a punt option. If you look at his routes run, they were actually pretty good for a tight end in this offense last week. Whiteheart was out there 64% of the time for routes. And then Vanderbilt has been pretty good as far as offense goes. Played a couple cupcakes, but Mike Wright has shown awesome mobility. He already has 247 rush yards. He's averaging just shy of 200 passing yards per game, but the mobility keeps him in play. And I think you could see this opportunity condensed this week after they played a couple easy games against Elon and Hawaii. In the run game, Rocco Griffin should be back. That should render this a little bit more of a timeshare than we've seen in the past. But Ray Davis at 5,700 had 20 carries last week and he had 3 targets. That's a lot of opportunity. You just worry about this team potentially being down in games. In the pass game, Quincy Skinner is going to play. He's going to be limited. That's a bit of a concern for me. I'm not sure what this offense looks like when he returns. Without him, Will Sheppard and Jaden McGowan saw a lot of opportunity, 11 targets and 7 targets. But when they were all active, it was 5, 6, and 5 for the 3, with McGowan leading the group. Still tentatively siding McGowan's way at 5K, just been more explosive than Will Sheppard, but they're both decent runbacks and stacks, not guys I want to prioritize. Bama taking on Texas, 19.5-point spread, 65 total. That gives Bama a team total of nearly 43 points, 42.25. Bama's up-tempo. They're pass-heavy. Bryce Young is the reigning Heisman. He passed only 195 yards, but this guy was hyper-efficient last week, and he rushed for 100 yards. He came out as a dual-threat quarterback by recruiting services. That's what they labeled him, but he never really displayed the rushing. He actually had negative career rushing yards till last week when he rushed for 100 yards. If he's going to rush, this guy has some of the best upside in all of college football. He has upside anyway, but 10.2 is a lot to pay for him. There is opportunity cost. However, if the running continues, he's someone we can take a look at. Stacks, you have Jermaine Burton, who's exceedingly expensive. He saw the exact same target volume as Trayshawn Holden. I would probably just go down to play Holden at this price. There wasn't too much separating them in terms of overall opportunity, yards per route run, things like that. And then the wide receiver 3 in the offense does appear to be Kobe Prentice for now. I think this could be a timeshare to some degree with, a Ja'Cory Brooks, whoever it may be, some of the freshmen. But right now, Kobe Prentice, 48% route share, was the 3rd most on this team, and he was the 3rd most targeted receiver. He's shockingly 100 more expensive than Trayshawn Holden. That doesn't make sense, but Prentice is the 3. And last thing to offer here, Cameron Latou, their tight end, projects to be back here, so he should be a full-time player, maybe someone you can look at. Then also, Alabama played a cupcake game in week 1, so Jahmyr Gibbs should be more involved moving forward. Just 10 touches for him in week 1. Wouldn't consider that to be the norm. I think Jahmyr Gibbs has slightly better volume than this, but, they're healthy now. Jason McClellan, Roydell Williams, and Trey Sanders are all back. Last year, a lot of these guys were injured when Brian Robinson really handled that massive workload. So do they want to use a timeshare? Maybe they do. I'm not sure. I'm not going to play a ton of Gibbs at this price, but he has the upside to at least handle a feature back workload. Texas, low team total. It is at 22.75. Quinn Ewers didn't play great in his first start. 225 passing yards, some turnovers, -9 rushing yards. He came out as a pseudo dual threat out of high school, but didn't really display that. But much tougher matchup here. Won't be playing Ewers at all at this number. He needs to continue to prove that he's capable of, rushing and putting up big scores, which he hasn't done. Maybe you can play some of his receivers as one-offs. Xavier Worthy, Jordan Whittington, these guys are full-time players. Tight end Jatavian Sanders had an excellent game, 6 targets, full-time player, 3K flat for him. I think he's the best play if you're going to take anybody on this Texas team overall, but we're still talking about a very small sample. Jatavian Sanders didn't play a lot last year. And then the third receiver in this offense, I think it's going to be a little volatile on a week-to-week basis, but Casey Kane, 53% route share, could be him. I think they rotate a little bit. So sticking mainly with Jatavian Sanders and maybe a Worthy or a Whittington, but these are GPP options. In the run game, Bijan Robinson, just 15 touches. Again, easy matchup for them. I think better days are ahead. It's just, yes, he's going to see more volume. Is the efficiency there against Alabama with this team total? I'd bet against it at this price, but I mean, 7,300 for Bijan. There's a good chance it's the cheapest he is all season. Southern Miss taking on Miami. This game has dropped in total rapidly, 51 here, 25-point spread in favor of the Hurricanes. Not really anything to say here about Southern Miss. They lost Ty Keys early in the game. He is questionable, looking like he's on the doubtful side. When Ty Keys is injured, they go full option. They use Frank Gore in a position called the superback, which is just the wildcat, really. Frank Gore carried 31 times. He passed 5 times. He's not going to really catch balls because he's either running it or he's throwing it. So, yeah, I mean, ton of carries, 176 yards, but far more difficult matchup. He's tough to trust when we know exactly what this team is going to look like. Going to be a decent value, but no standout. And then you're not playing any receivers because of the triple option aspect of the offense. Ty Keys is the only way you can even potentially target one of these guys. Miami, Tyler Van Dyke. Again, new offense. Josh Gaddis is the OC now. I don't think they pass as much or run as many plays this year. Van Dyke is not mobile, so that does raise some concerns with his volume. He really got there on volume last year. Hyper efficient passer. If you would have just looked at games he played the entire game and not games he played portions of, he would have averaged over 300 yards passing per game. But 6,400 in an offense that has changes, this is a bit rich for my blood. There's some other really good options in this price range we'll talk about later. In the backfield, this could be a 3-man committee. You had Henry Parrish lead the backfield, 17 touches. Thaddeus Franklin with 9, but you're also getting back Jalen Knighton from injury. This could be a timeshare. If you're taking a shot, it's probably Parrish, but I will likely avoid this situation. At receiver, this is a spot where they did not really play it how I thought they would. Xavier Restrepo led the team with 5 targets, but we had a bunch of timeshares listed on the depth chart. It didn't exactly shake out that way, and it's really tough to say because they played an easy matchup, but Restrepo led the team in routes with 67%. Behind him, it was actually Michael Redding, second, and Romello Brinson, third. Now, this is going to be a timeshare to some degree, no matter what. They have guys like Frank Ladson on the roster, multiple tight ends, and Will Mallory, Elijah Arroyo, tons of guys, Jaleel Skinner, that are going to play. So it's tough to target unless we get some continuity and some clarity with how this team is going to use their receivers. So Miami overall, despite the team total, is actually kind of a tough team to get to, in my opinion. Next up, we have Ohio taking on Penn State. Another one with, it's not the tightest spread here. 25.5 points in favor of Penn State, 54 total. Ohio is implied for just 14.25 points. They absolutely dominated FAU last week. Rourke, 345 passing yards, 11 rushing. We know he's mobile. That's by far the best game in his career. Now he's facing an elite secondary in Penn State. It'll be a fade for me at 5K. They did use a feature back, so they lost a bunch of guys. O'Shane Allison was injured, so that's an issue. But say Bangura, 23 carries, 2 targets, 114 rushing yards, another 5 yards through the air. He's highly involved. It's just, do you want to target and lock up a 5K running back on a 25.5 point underdog? I personally do not. In the past game, you might get some run back equity. Tyler Walton, 8 targets. He's the stone minimum, 64 receiving yards. It was actually James Bostic, who is the explosive receiver. He outgained Walton 136-64, but he's far more expensive, nearly 2K more expensive. I'll just side with Walton. Penn State. Sean Clifford still has not shown the ability to play through a full game. He looked pretty decent when he was out there. 282 passing yards, 2 rushing yards. I'm worried about the mobility. He got hurt in their last game. He's wearing a big clunky knee brace. This is a guy that was formerly mobile, but I don't know how mobile he is at this point in his career with injuries, and big knee brace is really hurting him. He's probably a fade at 7.3K, but I mean, the offense is efficient, much better matchup here. I think he's an outside play to consider. You can stack him pretty easily as receiving options are cheap. Parker Washington's still more expensive than Mitchell Tinsley, even though he was out-targeted 12-4. I'm just going to go with Tinsley. And then Keandre Lambert-Smith actually saw 8 targets himself. That's very interesting as well at 5K flat. So Keandre Lambert-Smith and Mitchell Tinsley are the stacking options I'm going to try to target. The backfield is an issue. It's a three-way timeshare. Katron Allen, Kevon Lee, Nicholas Singleton. Singleton's the player I like the most just because he's the five-star freshman. Probably could work into a larger workload later in the year, but no confidence right now in this team. All right, Marshall taking on Notre Dame. 20.5 point spread. Gives Marshall a 15.5 implied team total. Not great. They have the Texas Tech transfer, Henry Colombi there. He's mobile. The offense is going to be pass heavy, fairly up-tempo. Just what is the upside here against Notre Dame's defense that actually controlled Ohio State for a little bit in that game? So Colombi, outside target in tournaments, probably not much to look at here. Their receivers, stacking options, Talik Keaton, Corey Gamage, bit expensive for my liking at 5.3K, 6.6. Devin Miller's interesting, maybe as the wide receiver 3, 4.2K, but we can do better than this price adjusted. Then in the run game, I think we do see a bit of a timeshare to some degree. And Callan Laybourne, Ethan Payne split the work pretty evenly, 15 touches for Laybourne, 13 for Payne. It was a blowout win, so how much can we really take from it? They did list Laybourne as the clear starter over Payne on the depth chart, so maybe he's worth a flyer as a 4.2K running back in tournaments. Don't hate it, don't love it either. Notre Dame has good defense. Now, the Notre Dame offense, we just talked about them hanging in there with Ohio State. Buckner didn't look terrible. 18 pass attempts, that's not very many, but 177 yards, rush for 18. We know this is a guy that is hyper-mobile. I think this is a solid bounce back spot. 6K flat against Marshall, a team that played a weak FCS opponent. With the rushing upside, Buckner is certainly in play here, and I think they probably try to get him going a little bit through the air compared to what they did against Ohio State. It was a three-way timeshare at running back. They're still listed that way in the depth chart. If you're playing any of them, it's probably Audric Estime, who 3.8K for 9 touches last week. All of them came on the ground. They used Tyree more as a receiver than anyone else, but again, 5.8K versus 3.8K. I'll just take the cheap guy. Then at receiver, it's a lot of Michael Mayer. Predictably, he's 3.9K, the optimal stacking option with Buckner. He's the number one receiver despite being a tight end. Outside of him, you're going to see Braden Lenzy and Lorenzo Styles. A ton of them. They're really banged up at receiver right now. They don't have Colsey. They lost Avery Davis early in the season. So Notre Dame right now, kind of a wreck at receiver. Lorenzo Styles and Braden Lenzy are the two guys on the field for a majority of the snaps that you'd want to stack with. Tennessee Pitt. Awesome game here. 67 total. Should be back and forth. 6 point spread. Both teams implied north of 30 points. Tennessee at 36.5. Playing a Pitt team that gave up 5.8 yards per carry to West Virginia. Hendon Hooker's mobile. He's an efficient passer. He's 7.8K with this massive team total. Certainly stackable. Like Hendon Hooker quite a bit at this price. Easy to play as well. We saw Cedric Tillman, the wide receiver 1, lead the team in targets. Not anything that we were really surprised about. Brew McCoy was the final starter. He started alongside Jalen Hyatt. And again, route rates weren't really condensed here. That's not any fault of these players by themselves. It's just they played a cupcake opponent. So Tillman, 50% route rate. Jalen Hyatt, 53%. Then Brew McCoy, 47%. I expect all of these to increase when they play competitive games. So all of them stackable. You also saw Jabari Small and Jalen Wright split 50-50. Again, I think this is more the product of game script. They were killing Ball State. So did they need to use Jabari Small in a feature back workload? No. Even though he was listed as the clear starter, I think even though Jabari Smalls was listed as the clear starter, I think this probably persists a little bit. You know, Tennessee, they just run so many raw plays that Jalen Wright's going to be involved. The way I see him moving forward is similar to last year where they have a 1A and a 1B. It's very tough to have a guy in Jabari Small who sees close to 100% of the touches just because they run so many plays. They need to spell these backs at times. So in my opinion, Jalen Wright's going to be involved. I think it is a 1A, 1B situation. Think of it maybe as a 60-40 split, 65-35 split in favor of Small. But if you want to throw a dart on Jalen Wright too, their team total's high. And again, play volume is just ridiculous for Tennessee. On the other side, Pitt change OCs. They go to Cignetti, former Boston College OC. Project to be run heavier, project to be slower. And they tried to do that against West Virginia with very little success. Average under 3.0 yards per carry. Rodney Hammond got hurt. He sprained an ankle. DraftKings lists him as questionable. They list him as probable. I view him more as questionable. their coaching staff hasn't been talking about Hammond's status at all. At the very least, maybe you see him in more of a timeshare with Abanaconda, neither of whom were efficient. Hammond certainly more efficient than Abanaconda, but don't love this backfield regardless. Slovis at quarterback had a career game, over 10 yards per pass attempt. He only threw 25 times in a back-and-forth game. Again, it just speaks to Pittsburgh's new commitment to the run game, which Slovis is not involved in whatsoever. Logged negative 20 rushing yards against Pittsburgh. He plays for Pittsburgh. Against West Virginia because of the sacks he takes, and that is a career staple of Slovis. You just can't play him with this rushing negative production on the profile. Kanata Mumfield was the wide receiver 1, 8 targets there. Routes right where you'd expect them to be. Jared Wayne was 2, 5 targets, 6,200. These are the only 2 players that logged a massive route share for this team. Outside of that, players like Bob Memes were part-time players, so I don't want to play them. I think you can just stick with Kanata Mumfield, Jared Wayne. Just for reference, like they played over 93% of the routes apiece. Means was at 62%. Then for reference, those of you curious, Gavin Bartholomew, 75% of the routes, only 1 target. He's their tight end. Maybe worth a punt. He played more than Means, so that's at least worth considering. App State, Texas A&M. App State implied for 17.5 points. They're 19-point underdogs to A&M, 54 total. Do not expect the same shootout we saw against UNC last week. Do not expect Chase Bryce to have the same success, throwing 6 touchdowns and 361 yards on 38 attempts. More likely, we see Chase Bryce regress to his career statistics, or at least somewhere close to that. That makes him a tough call at 6,200. Again, I think there's other players you can play. I'd rather play Buckner. The team total is just really low here. Backfield's a timeshare. Nate Noel and Peoples primarily, but Daychurch Harrington got a couple carries. It's essentially a 50-50 timeshare, but Peoples handles the red zone work. So, I mean, it's tough to play either of these guys in this matchup at these prices. Receiver didn't really show a lot of consistency. Again, they replaced their top 4 guys. But if you want to break this down based on routes, which is probably the best way to do this, just given we haven't seen a lot of them yet. We had Christian Horn at 81% of the routes, Deshaun Davis, 72%, and then Christian Wells at 60%. From there, it drops off even further with Caden Robinson at 41%. So Christian Horn and Deshaun Davis, probably the 1-2. Deshaun Davis is 3,800. He saw more targets, and he led the team in receiving. He's probably the play if you're running and a player opposite of a Texas A&M stack. Haynes King played well in his debut this past week, after he was hurt very early in the 2021 season, but he's mobile, 35 rushing yards, pass for 364. We like him more for the mobility than anything else. He's just a bit expensive at 8.7K. With a similar implied team total to Tennessee, I'd rather just play Hooker, who has the same skill set at a cheaper price. But for tournaments, King is certainly in play. And then Devin A-Chain should be in line for a bounce back game here. Touched the ball 20 times, 18 were carries, only rushed for 42 yards. This is a guy that averaged 7 yards per carry last year, so better days are ahead for A-Chain. I know they played an FCS team, but App State shouldn't scare you that much either. Big difference in competition. In the pass game, Evan Stewart, their freshman, 9 targets, finished with 57 yards. That was pretty good for him. I think he's targetable at that price, but it doesn't appear he's taking over Anais Smith anytime soon, who's also saw 9 targets, but Smith just way more efficient, 164 receiving yards. He's also a guy that played running back previously in his career, so you will see him in the backfield occasionally. 3 carries for him last week. He's a solid play behind this massive team total. Those are the top 2 receivers, and then Chase Lane should be third, 5 targets for him. Route share wasn't quite as good for Chase Lane, but he's going to be the third receiver more times than not. You look at the route share for him, it was sitting at 47%. He split time with Keith Brown, so if you're looking for a direct pivot, Keith Brown, 2 targets, 57% of the routes, 58%, excuse me. He could be interesting as a flyer. Everyone else is a bit more expensive than him. You get a really cheap price on Keith Brown, who was involved. Washington State, Wisconsin. Not a ton to see here. 49 total is not great. Washington implied 15.75 points as a 17.5-point underdog. They added a lot of players from Incarnate Word. Their quarterback, Cameron Word, follows some of his coaching staff over to Washington State. He's somewhat mobile, but where he really benefits is from this voluminous offense, which should be similar to some of the Washington State offenses we've seen in the past. He threw 41 passes in week 1. No, it wasn't efficient, 228 yards, but that's a ton of volume. The reason I don't like him in this game is the opponent, Wisconsin, plays slow. They play run heavy. They did pressure play volume, and they play good defense historically. Tough spot for Ward. You may be able to take some of these receivers because they're so cheap and run them opposite like a Braylon Allen. Donovan Ollie led the team in routes, 9 targets. That's solid. Dejon Stribling, 10 targets. He was heavily involved. Lincoln Victor, 7 targets. These were some of the most involved players on their offense, and a couple of them are below 4K. This is a really good spot to target them. Again, if you look at just the routes overall, you had Renard Bell, 81%, Donovan Ollie, 85, Dejon Stribling, 68. So Donovan Ollie in particular looks like a good play. In the run game, Nakia Watson, full bell cow back, but now he faces Wisconsin as a big underdog. 18 carries, 3 targets, 116 yards. He won't have that same level of efficiency, but he is cheap. I think you could look at him in tournaments. Where I really want to go is Braylon Allen, 14 carries, 148 yards, unbelievable efficiency. They played Illinois State, but this guy rushed for over 1,000 yards last year, and he only started 6 games, played in portions of others. He's hyper efficient on the ground. He can catch passes, caught 8 of them last year. Predictably wasn't targeted in last week's game. They just didn't need to use him. He's an excellent play at 7K. Pass game, inept for the most part. Graham Mertz threw for 219 yards. 135 of those were yards after catch. So his receivers making the most of poor opportunities that Mertz was providing. Nothing has really changed with him. He's not mobile. Can't play him at this price. His receivers are even hard to play. Marcus Allen, Chimere Dike, not guys I want to target. Skylar Bell. It's going to be a rotation here, not condensed. Maybe Marcus Allen if you're really itching to play a Wisconsin guy. The way their routes broke down, 75% for Allen, 65% for DK, and 65% for Bell. You're not going beyond those guys. Colorado Air Force. Colorado in-state rivalry, 18-point underdogs. Same 15.75 low implied team total. They don't have a clear starter quarterback. It should be Shroud, but it appears they're going to play both. That's at least early reports. Can't play either for that reason. Running back, also a split. Can't play any for that reason. And then receiver, if you're going to have any Brendan Lewis, you can't play the receivers. Even tight end Brady Russell, 5K. There's better min-price options than Colorado. Easy enough. Air Force, they run the triple option, which gives us a ton of volume on the ground. Their quarterback, Hazik Daniels, should be treated almost like a running back. He's 5.9K. Awesome matchup. Doesn't quite average double-digit touches per game, but he's heavily involved in certain instances. So Hazik Daniels, I think he makes sense. Rushed for 100 yards in the last game. You just should treat him like a running back. So he's not a preferred play, but he's in play. Brad Roberts, this is a guy that averaged 23 carries last year. He didn't have a single target, but he also averaged over 100 rushing yards. That should be no problem against Colorado here. Again, you look at their defense. Colorado allowed 9.2 yards per carry. No, that's not a mistake. They allowed more yards per carry than yards per pass attempt. I think you could play Brad Roberts as a contrarian play. You just worry that there's no pass catching upside whatsoever with him. They also use slot backs. Backup fullback is going to be Emmanuel Michel. He'll play a little bit. In the slot back position, you have DeAndre Hughes, 5K flat. He also has a couple targets. You saw 2 last week. Hughes is maybe playable in tournaments, but outside of that, no other Air Force players have enough opportunity to really play at any point. Iowa State, Iowa, the worst game on the board. I'll be honest with you guys. I'm not playing anyone in this game, but to break it down, Deckers is maybe in tournaments because he's mobile, 11 yards in their last game. He's shown much better upside throughout his career, even though he's played in a limited role, backup role. He's not going to throw for 293 against Iowa outside of something crazy happening, so he's still GPP only. The backfield, Jarrell Brock got the first crack at duties, outcarried Eli Sanders 17-9. I think it's exactly that. Brock lead back, Sanders change of pace. Maybe Silas is involved, change of pace. Cartevious Norton got hurt. He's not going to be involved. At receiver, Xavier Hutchinson, 10 targets, picked up right where he left off. And then they used Jalen Noel as their wide receiver too. He saw 8 targets. Now, Hutchinson outgained him 128-25. So I still think there's a lot of reasons to play Hutchinson over Noel. But if you just don't find yourself in that price point, maybe in tournaments, I'm still not going to do it. On Iowa, I'm not playing anybody. Spencer Petras is horrific. They're running like walk-on receivers out there. Arlen Bruce is the only one that's even semi-interesting. Maybe Sam Laporta. He's an athletic receiving tight end, but he's really limited by Petras. And then they're getting back Gavin Williams in the run game, who was listed as the starter over LaShawn Williams. That was curious. LaShawn Williams touched the ball 27 times in Gavin's absence last week, but in a timeshare, you just can't play these guys. Houston, Texas Tech, solid game here. 63.5 total, 3.5 point spread in favor of Texas Tech. Houston's quarterback Clayton Tune had to rally in last week's game. Only passed for 206 yards, but rushed for 49. It's going to be a fairly up-tempo, pass-heavy scheme, and we know Texas Tech and the Zach Kitley system coaxes that out of you. Tune's a fine price-adjusted play. Also easy to stack. You have the expensive option in Dell, who's a proven commodity, led the team in targets. You have the four-star freshman Matthew Golden. He's at 4.3K, saw 5 targets. You have the reliable tight end Christian Trahan, 3,700, 3 targets for him. Plenty of options with Houston, and I think you can even get it in the weeds a little bit. Unfortunately, they rotated their receivers a little more than they usually do. We saw Joseph Manjack, Sam Brown. These guys rotated at the third receiver spot, so it's not the most exciting spot when you have like Keyshawn Carter, Manjack, and Samuel Brown all rotating. Running back, Brandon Campbell played the most. Taysom Henry was involved. This was a 17-10 touch split, and I think that's probably the case moving forward, something in that capacity, so no bell cow role there. Campbell interesting in tournaments. Texas Tech, they lost Tyler Show. That means Donovan Smith should start here. They priced him up a little bit, but he's mobile. We've seen him through a couple seasons now. Last year, he was good in terms of mobility, 221 passing yards. We know it's the Zach Kitley offense that they used at Western Kentucky with Bailey Zappi. So he's affordable too. If we have mobility with this passing volume in a competitive game, Smith is a good play overall. In the run game, they listed Taj Brooks and Sir Roderick Thompson as co-starters. Not too interested in this pass-heavy scheme. At receiver, we've got a ton of options. Jarin Bradley, 5K flat. Louis Fungi, I think is how you say that. Excuse me. Louis or Loke, however you say his name. 6K flat and Miles Price, 7K flat. Pretty good prices on these players. Again, they're probably not going to be as efficient as the Western Kentucky offense was last year, but these players have a lot of upside just from the raw volume. Jaron Bradley at a 45% route rate, Miles Price at 53, and then we had Lewis at 24. He was actually outpaced by Trey Cleveland, who was at 45%. Maybe he could be worth a dart throw, even though he wasn't targeted quite as much, 3 targets for him. Last game, Virginia, Illinois. 58 total, 4.5 point spread in favor of Illinois. A higher total than I thought. I actually bet the under on this game. But Virginia changed OCs. They go to Des Kitchens, former running backs coach. They were crazy, up-tempo, crazy pass-heavy last year. So even if they remain so, we don't expect it to be to the same degree. That should give some regression to this offense. Meanwhile, Illinois transitioned to Barry Looney as OC. He runs a heavy, heavy run scheme, but very up-tempo as well. Played with UTSA last year's their OC. Even with Virginia expected to take a step back in terms of volume, Brennan Armstrong, phenomenal play here, 6,300, rush for over 100 yards in their most recent game, pass for 246. This guy is hyper efficient, has good receivers, and a decent amount of volume, not as much, but still should be solid here. They have their top 4 receivers back, essentially. They're only losing 1. So Dontavian Wicks is back, 12 targets for him. Keaton Thompson, gadget player, rushing upside, former QB, 6 targets. He's 52. Lavelle Davis missed all last year with an ACL, 6 targets for him, played a ton of routes, led the team in receiving, probably the best price-adjusted play. And then Billy Kemp, he's their situational 4th receiver. They didn't use the 4th wide receiver as much as they did in the previous regime, but he's a veteran. Maybe you can target him, but I'd rather play Lavelle Davis. Grant Meesh is the tight end. Running backfield, we didn't have Walker, so Paris Jones, a former walk-on, saw 19 carries, 21 touches overall, went over 100 yards. I'd be concerned. They have a completely new offensive line, and they're playing a much stiffer test against Illinois. Tommy DeVito, signal caller for the Illini, pure game manager, not enough rushing or passing upside to target. Chase Brown, still one of the best price-adjusted plays on the slate. This guy carried 37 times and had 1 target in their last game. Again, they lost Josh McCray early in the year. They lost him in week 1. So Chase Brown, absurd workload. He's not expensive enough, especially as a favorite in this game. Plus, the pass catching upside is good with him. We saw Isaiah Williams far more productive in week 2, 15 targets. It's just absurd target volume. Behind him, I'm still probably looking at Pat Bryant as the number 2 receiver, but Brian Hightower making a case for himself as well. It's going to be Chase Brown or bust for me, just with Williams being where he is in terms of price. Chase Brown, better price adjusted play in my opinion. But that will do it for us today. Let me know in the comment section what you think about the breakdown. Let me know if there's a question you have. If I missed a player, you want to hear about them, I'll get back to you. And you can also reach out to me on Twitter at Matt_Kajeski. But thank you guys again. Hit the thumbs up button on the way out. Until next time, we will see you then.